I'm Malcolm Bendall, and I'm here to present part 3 of our series of 15 parts on the MSAT plasmoids and their application in relation to current technology, and also giving a history of the past attempts to bring forward this technology in this case, which goes to Nikola Tesla's planetary power plant. Nikola Tesla's financier, JP Morgan, was upset when Tesla announced that he'd driven a car from Canada to Miami, reaching speeds of up to 60 miles an hour, and this is 100 years ago, so quite an achievement, and just using the aerials, and so a tuned electric motor. So, and of course, JP Morgan's reaction to that was, how can I put a meter on that? And that gets us to where we are now. So those interests, which is interesting because just after that, the government had to step in and break up those monopolies because there was just too much power concentrated in too few hands. So, and of course, history documents that Tesla, and now we're documenting it, that Nikola Tesla's planetary power plant is a very simple concept, that we have enormous amounts of energy being, like a blowtorch put on our planet by the sun, and that energy can be captured and harnessed if you find a way to string a wire from the ionosphere down to the ground. Now, how you make that wire is you go to the tallest granite mountain in the world you can find, and you simply connect it to the ionosphere using an ionized stream. Now, plasmoids are the path of lightning, as in part 1 of this section we demonstrated that knowledge was existing maybe 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, that plasmoids were the path of lightning, and they're sentient beings that store charge within their own electromagnetic containment field, and that is an imploded sphere that creates a 0 point, which is the focus of the movement of the protons and electrons within that confined field. So now, with the plasmoid planetary power plant, the next slide will show a poster, which the bottom half of that poster, this poster can be obtained through strikefoundation.earth or Randall Carlson and HowTube channel. So basically, here we have the patents and the background information and the diagrams that Tesla himself produced of the concept of the Earth analogy and the Earth realization, that actually you can pump up the Earth with energy and then you can distribute it throughout the planet. This is his Wardenclyffe Tower, which you'll see has the sort of donut-type half-sphere shape, and you can see here very clearly in his patents that he has a donut there, and that the main coil comes up into the 0 point of that donut. This is the other part of that poster, and this is the modern application of Tesla's theories, and showing using modern technology that we would take, as Tesla postulated, the energy from the sun as a solar wind, and actually turn the planet itself into a solar panel, which is 24/7. That means it's 24 hours, 7 days a week. So that would be enough energy to provide free power to our whole planet to operate our systems. Now, the bottom line is you have a plasmoid generator here, you fire that generator up, and it goes to the ionosphere through the Schumann cavity, and an ionized column will naturally rise in the air anyway. And recent photography shows that plasmoids are what creates ionization of the air. The ionization of the air creates an effective wire, which means you can translate potential differences between different parts of a storm system, which is cold, moist air coming against hot, dry air, creating enormous charge differentials, and the plasmoids shoot up to eliminate those charge differentials before they become catastrophic. If not for the plasmoids, you'd have energies that could wipe out whole civilizations, because you could have one storm that would actually, without having that energy taken down to the ground safely, or not safely if you're standing underneath a thunderbolt, but generally safety if you're actually a civilization. So basically this gives the analogy here, and it's basically what we'd like to do is we'll put in build a tunnel into a granite mountain that's over 2 kilometres high. I think in America you have Mount Denali, which is 5.5 kilometres high. Obviously in India a lot higher, in the Himalayas. But this is basically would be the geometry of it. Here you have the schematic of the plasmoid generator, and what you would end up with, which would be all the frequencies of energy stacked together. Now, we'll highlight that in the next slide, but basically you take the ionosphere with a charge. We have randomly occurring different frequencies, and you actually transmit those frequencies down to the Earth through this column here from the ionosphere down. And because it's so much energy, you really need to distribute that, because energy will naturally report to angles, which is we lost in our society because we lost the sacred geometry, therefore we lost the relationship between energy and geometry. And that's the bit that's missing in our society, and this will replace it, that's missing. So basically you have therefore when you bring this down as random frequencies, it'll automatically report to these frequencies, which automatically stores it in separate capacitor banks. You have a control room here, and basically then once you've stacked it into what I'd call a cord or a rope, if you think of winding these frequencies together and then sending them back up again as distinct chords, as a chord in music. So then you're able to then transmit that into the Schumann cavity, which is a resonant cavity, which is actually, as we've been saying, if you take a sphere and North Pole and South Pole, you create a 0 point. Well, the Schumann cavity is a spherical 0 point. If you look at it that way, it means that you've got a positive and negative charge of the Earth and its atmosphere against a positive charge from the solar wind. So therefore, you have the ionosphere positively charged, the atmosphere negatively charged, and you have a discharge point, which is a 0 point, your Schumann cavity. If you transmit your energy into that cavity, you can actually then able to use that in a practical sense, as Tesla demonstrated with his car, that if you have aerials with a tuned electric motor, then you can actually turn that into motive force. That means that energy from the sun and from this huge solar panel, so it's not like putting solar panels on your roof, which is a fairly primitive act when you've got a whole solar panel above you that's 24/7. So it makes that a bit foolish. So we'll go to the next slide. And here you have the receiving level. So this is the power coming down, is actually then split up into its natural, and you'll see the little kinks here, because actually there's little, you've got the 8 planes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 planes. And this comes back to, you'll notice this is the same as the model of the elements, where all the noble gases would be along this plane, right? So therefore that's the plane at which this is mirror imaged across here. So basically all the energies would report to those planes, and these are, you have 16, 32, 64. So basically there's a total of 64 different planes, but these are designed to capture, there's more geometry involved, this is a simplification, but to capture all the 64 points on the 32 planes. So anyway, the next slide will show the transmission level. So having taken all that energy, then you transfer it to this bank, and you actually then put together all these frequencies in a discrete package and then transmit it to ionosphere. So if you go to the next slide, there, this is from the ground up to the Schumann cavity here. And that means that the Schumann cavity is above everyone globally. So anywhere in the globe, you can then take that energy and use it to power a submarine, use it to power a washing machine, use it to power a boat, a plane, a car. Instead of having wiring in your house, you simply have an aerial that you can just turn on and off, and then it turns it on. So basically that means there's no meter between a human and God's blessing. So there's no meter between humanity and resources. So basically that means that with that excess of free power, that means everyone will be intrinsically more wealthy because you can pump water for free. You can pump, when I say free, the power's free, but the water itself, you know, obviously the pumping device would have to be built. So therefore, it's a new industrial revolution. We've got all these new machines to build, so it'll be a fantastic thing. And history tells us that industrial revolutions, all boats rise with the tide. So basically, by providing free energy throughout the whole planet, it means that you can go anywhere. And also that free energy, because it's in the Schumann cavity, it means that you can gain escape velocity with your spaceships with actually using the power of the sun. So this is quite fundamental, and therefore the plasmoids, which are atomic battery, can be used. You can charge them to enormous levels. As I have said previously, that if you take the charge density of a battery, you know, diesel is 100 times more your charge density and power in that than a normal battery. But yeah, the plasmoids are millions of times more power for the same area. So basically, you know, we go back to the in presentation in section 1, and there's Einstein's quote that there's enough power in a glass full of water to boil all the oceans of the world, and that gives you a good idea of the scale of what we're talking about, that a glass full of water has that much power. Now, that's enough power to drive the world thousands of times over if you talk about a daily usage. So anyway, so the next slide goes back to the geometry. Well, obviously we have, this this purple here represents an ionizing gas, which is argon, such as, you know, all the noble gases, argon lights, neon lights, everyone's familiar with. And what people may not be familiar with is it doesn't give off light when it's being charged. It actually gives off light when that charge has been turned off and it's a collapsing field. In fact, it's the same as a collapsing bubble. If you view it as a bubble, then it's actually collapsing after it's charged. You know, like the neon atom is charged up and the orbits go out and holds a charge, and then it collapses and it gives out light. That's the same light as you have with a star in the jar. And it's the same principle as the star in the jar. So basically, because it can store, that effectively that means it can store energy, then it can evenly dissipate that energy. So otherwise, if you had a copper wire, it would just vaporize and burn, right? And this is a very smart way of doing it. You put the receiving and transmitting levels, you transmit and receive through a medium of an inert gas that can hold enormous amount of charge. And because this is like over 2 kilometres height, which Mount Denali would be 5.5 kilometres in height, which is a couple of miles high. And then you could also use the pressure of this gas when it ionizes and discharging. You could slot a a spaceship into that and fire it out like a blow dart. And so that would be a very sensible thing to do, because then you can use it as a practical space launching entity, and it can also be powered, or would be powered, from the same system. So it means you can gain in this 5 kilometres, you could, or even a couple of kilometres there, a mile, you can actually gain escape velocity. So, but you also have the backup of the planetary power plants, power that it can get just through a series of aerials. So I think that covers that. The next slide there goes through all of this. As I said, is related back to the model of the elements, which we dealt with in section 2, and these slides here go through the relationship between the plasmoids and the what they are and how they operate as to their relationship to the planetary power plant. As I said, there's 2 types of plasmoids. One is generated in air, which we're using for the planetary power plant, which is in an isolated area. I think Mount Denali is about 1,000 miles from the nearest town or large town, so it can operate with large voltages safely because there's nobody nearby that could interfere with those huge voltages of millions of volts and hundreds of thousands of amps. So basically the next couple of slides, I think, go through the fact that the use of these new technologies will lead to cleaner air, cheaper water, food, housing and fuel, together with less pollution, higher oxygen levels in the cities. Well, that goes to both technologies, because obviously if we implement both of them, both retrofitting current technology and having that technology retrofitted, that means so we can eliminate all the hydrocarbon pollution and CO2 pollution and carbon monoxide pollution on the one hand on the ground, but as we implement the new technology, which was Tesla's planetary power plant technology, then that technology can then be can transition, from I suppose you've got 3 transitions there. One is you've got the existing internal combustion engines that can be transitioned through retrofit to be more efficient and stop pollution. Then you can also then transition at the same time. You can transition to a new breed of cars which will have no gearbox, will have no axles, and will have no engine that we would determine as an engine. It was simply a Vajra torus turbine in a body of water, say in same sort of geometry as a fire extinguisher, and that the water would power the wheels and power the motor. So you would have nothing that you would recognise as a current car. Now, you can have that in addition to, obviously, you can either use the planetary power plant to power that, or use the plasmoids as an atomic battery. As I said, they'd hold millions times more charge than a normal battery for the same size. So you can imagine that you could drive your car for your whole lifetime on one charge of plasmoids. And then hand it over to your son and the son. So basically, that's where this is going to, and the applications under consideration, which is actually we're now implementing this. We have the prototypes that are functional and ready to go. We're now talking on a government level. We're talking on an original engine manufacturer level. We're talking at the highest level of government, the highest level of manufacturing. And so basically, we have a lot of this stuff needs precision engineering, and we're focusing on factories in Switzerland to achieve that. And so here's just another description. An MSAT plasmoid is a coherent structure of plasma and magnetic fields. They're found naturally in thunderstorms and more specifically in ball lightning. MSAT plasmoids can be used to cause the separation of water into its constituent parts of hydrogen, oxygen. Again, hydrogen's a group, and protium is what we're really talking about. So there's a protium planetary power plant, basically, if you want to look at it that way. The next slide, please. So, and this goes to specifically how the MSAT plasmoids are deployed in that first stage of swapping out cars and retrofitting them before we go to the next stage of altering the basic technology behind it to just pure plasmoid. But obviously at the end game is to have Tesla's planetary power plant to provide free energy throughout the whole planet, which means that we can sustain our current population and expand it, and that people will have more time and money because they won't have to pay for petrol, they won't have to pay for electricity, and the planet itself is providing all those things which before we had to strive to get. So that'll give people more time to for their families and more time to do studies into these higher levels of knowledge, which goes back to, we have to go backwards to go forwards because, we've lost all that sacred geometry knowledge. We've lost this knowledge that was existent before of these number systems which are universal. MSAT plasmoids once created a charge from the exhaust gases of internal combustion engines. This is then used as an energy source and to convert the normal harmful emissions from such engines into water and hydrogen. So there are three stages. The first, air is ionized using UV light of a specific frequency, hence the star in the jar. That purple light is UV light at a specific frequency, and then introduced in the MSAT plasmoid generator. So that's the first stage. The second is MSAT plasmoids are formed in water by passing this ionized air through a diffuser, then over a catalyst of stainless steel shavings. MSAT plasmoids are then generated by collapsing cavitation bubbles, which are created by a vacuum and then imploded by applying pressure. And that's simply the action of a piston. Pressure, vacuum, pressure, vacuum. And the next slide, please. MSAT plasmoid protein power, finally cold MSAT plasmoid and water mixture. And that's water in its gas phase, passes through catalytic tornado resonator, which is our thunderstorm machine. This comprises two spheres. The exhaust gases from the engine charge the MSAT plasmoids. Energy is released in the form of plasma, which is sufficient to change the molecular structure of the exhaust. Not only the molecular structure, but also atomic structure. Energy is also transferred to the MSAT plasmoid retained in the water that is in its gas phase, which is then added to the fuel intake of the engine, either through the carburetor or fuel injector in the case of diesel engines. So the next slide, please. And then MSAT plasmoids are donut or toroidal-shaped clusters of net protons or net electrons that once captured and placed into a toroidal orbit are capable of absorbing, storing and releasing enormous amounts of energy present within their self-generated, self-regulated and structured electromagnetic containment field. Now this is just reinforcing you have a sphere, you push which is a bubble. Say in water, you push the north and south pole together. So now there's a 0 point created between the north pole and the south pole. That creates an equatorial plane. That equatorial plane has another two small 0 points because now you've created two circles or infinity symbol. Yep. So those circles are then the small gates, and we'll go on in another slide shows the relationship around the world of the knowledge of this big gate, which is a 0 point, and the two small closed gates. Normally in China, they brick those gates up. Also, a lot of the Christian churches also brick those gates up. So other temples have them open. But I suppose I posit that if you build a temple or you build a pyramid structure, then actually you do, if so facto, have access through geometry to those other 0 points. But that's a deeper discussion. So basically, IMSAT plasmoids in effect function as an atomic battery that can be self-charging due to its ability to convert matter, and that is the matter we're talking about there is protium, hydrogen, that just have one electron, one proton, no nucleus, so no nuclear byproducts, which is very important. Matter to available clean energy. MSAT plasmoids, by the unique sacred geometry, cause a consequential electromagnetic containment field that generates a 0 point naturally and casually without much effort, have the ability to convert the atomic mass of protium, the atoms, into usable energy. Next, thanks. So, and this goes back to our unification model, and we've already gone over that, so we'll go to the next slide, but it's important that people reinforce those points, is that you're talking about minus 259.2 relating to the great year of 25,920 years. The reason I keep repeating this is everyone has to understand the relationship between time and matter. So if you don't understand the relationship between time and matter, that's the basis of the next industrial revolution. If you do not understand that or do not care to understand that, it means it holds society back to the glass ceiling we have at the moment, where our maths doesn't work anymore and at the level we're at now, and our science doesn't work anymore at the level we have now. Our planet is unsustainable using the technologies we use now. So by enlightenment of saying, hey, we don't want to destroy our planet, if we have free resources, we don't have to have wars over those resources. So therefore, the chance of complete self-annihilation, which we're standing on the brink of at the moment, is less. So anyway, the next slide. Just again, reinforcing that, there's universal, the evidence the universe is intelligent design. Now, I was told when I was at university that there was some great big gas cloud that randomly formed the planet, or people say, oh, well, things just through radioactive decay, we form everything and that's fine. But they're random, unstructured events. So therefore, you need an intelligent entity there is a blueprint, and for our solar system, for the universe, a blueprint for all life, and a blueprint by which our bodies grow, which are called the soul. So the soul of the planet, the soul of the body, the soul of the universe is, through the 0 point, there is no time space. So everything is both existing at the 1 point in time and all points in time at the same time. And all points in space and 1 point in space all at the same time. When you have everything, you have nothing, and when you have nothing, you have everything. So this paradox has escaped our society for a few thousand years, and hopefully that paradox will be realized through the model of the elements and then applied through the application of that, because the sacred geometry, I would say, is the key that opens the door to knowledge. And if you throw away that key, which we've done through the ignorance of our scientific community, and I suppose it's too generous to say science. I think, it's probably more accurate that when lab rats live in cages and have no relationship or metric with the real world, then they become more and more removed from it. Then you have lab rats teaching lab rats, teaching lab rats. So we have to get out of that cycle. It's destructive and not productive. And so therefore, we need to go back to the 18th century again, start again, because the 18th century was great because people were simply observing nature and copying it. Now we're just, observing exotic maths and really getting more and more removed from creation, and more removed from nature, and more removed from the natural process of nature, which were, very much the work of Victor Charlesberger in relation to water, and with Walter Russell in relation to the elements, and obviously Nikola Tesla in relation to tapping those energies from those existing natural systems, rather than trying to force energy out of materials with explosive technology, which are toxic. So basically, I think the next slide. So this goes back again to the propulsion, using matter as a propulsion device, as we said earlier in this section. But it is, the reason we're repeating this is that this is the last slide, and we're going on to the next section, section 4, which will just show you here what we'll be presenting in the next presentation will be MSAT plasmoids Vajra in ancient history, which is a very exciting connection, mainly the work of Randall Carlson going back in history and putting that part together, because geometry and history is something that you have to understand. As I keep saying, the further you can go back in history, the further you can go forward in life. If you refuse to study history, you'll be cursed to repeat the mistakes of history. So, so if you understand the past, you can build the future. So that's what we're doing here, is going back as the first step to knowledge, is going back to the past knowledge and then building on it, not simply, throwing it in the rubbish bin and denying that it's there.